Chapter 11. Conscious Contact. The God Who Makes Room. Step 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Early morning is the hour this chapter loves best, so picture it there. The house not yet loud, the coffee hot this time, the day still unopened on the table like mail. The 10th step gave you the day's architecture. The 11th gives you the day's heart. And it names what it offers with a phrase so quietly perfect that people say it for years before they hear it, the way they said restore for years before chapter 2, conscious contact. Stop and let the phrase do its work. It does not say establish contact. It does not say achieve, earn, attain, or, God forbid, maintain contact, as though the line were yours to keep from going dead. The contact is not the variable in that phrase. The contact is the constant. This whole book has been one long documentation of the constant. Held in the sun before your first morning, accompanied down every road including the ones you have wept over, carried when there was one set of prints, present in the pit itself. The line was never dead. He has been on the road with you the entire way. That is the oldest claim in this book, and by now you have seen its receipts. What varies? The only thing that ever varied is the conscious part, your noticing. And noticing, blessedly, is a craft. It can be practiced. It can be improved. The step's own humble, workmanlike word, the word you'd use for a golf swing or a soup. Which means the 11th step is not a summons to spiritual heroics. It is an invitation to get gradually, unhurriedly, imperfectly better at noticing the someone who was never not there. To have your eyes opened, a little more each morning, on a road you were never walking alone. Prayer, in this book's grammar, is not long-distance calling. It is turning to the one beside you and saying anything at all. And here is the tender thing this chapter wants you to know before it teaches you a single practice, the thing that reframes your whole history with prayer, including the years you'd call prayerless. You have been praying all along. Badly aimed, yes, but praying. Remember the prologue's letter. Old Dr. Jung telling Bill Wilson's friend that the craving for alcohol was the spiritual thirst of the being in a low disguise, spirits reaching for spirit, the same word for both because it was always the same thirst. Remember Gerald May's whole life work in one line. Addiction is desire for God, nailed to the wrong thing. The longing itself never the enemy, never anything but the best thing in you. Now put it together with the plainest tenderness. Every night you sat at the bar was a botched vigil. Every high was a counterfeit transfiguration. The compulsion that dragged you back and back and back was your contemplative vocation, kidnapped, a heart built for adoration, adoring the wrong altar with absolute fidelity. You were never the unspiritual one in the family. You were the most spiritual one, aimed wrong. The evidence is the very wreckage. Nobody wrecks a life over a thirst that's small. So when this chapter now invites you to prayer and meditation, hear what is actually being said. Not acquire a foreign skill, but come home, longing. The thirst that dug the pit is the same thirst that will now dig the well, and it already knows the way down. The rooms have watched this transfer 10,000 times and even have a joke for it. Nobody takes to the 11th step like a drunk. We were already professionals at seeking. We only needed the address corrected. Now, what is prayer for? Look hard at the step's strange restriction, because people trip on it. Praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Only. No petitions. Is the reader with a sick child supposed to sit on her hands and request knowledge while the fever climbs? Gently. No. The step is not forbidding asking. The teacher who assigned the daily bread prayer was not overruled by a committee in Akron. What the only is doing is surgical, and by now you can name the tumor it is cutting. Prayer, in the hands of the false self, becomes one more management console, the shopping list, the outcomes desk, the negotiation, all be good if the attempt to enlist omnipotence as staff for the very project of control that step 1 pronounced dead. The founders had all prayed that way. At the end, desperately, treaty prayers at 3 a.m., promising God the moon for one more chance they intended to waste. And the steps only as their scar tissue turn to wisdom. It turns the prayer from outcomes to alignment, from managing the day to entrusting it, praying the two things a creature actually needs: sight of the direction, and strength for the walking. But asking itself, asking is not the disease. Asking wrongly was. Asking is what children do, and it is intimacy, not commerce, when the asker isn't billing. Ask for the sick child, the shaky newcomer, the rent, the courage, the marriage. Ask with both hands. This book only asks you to notice what you are doing when you do it. And here, quietly, the way the biggest doors open, we have arrived at the largest thing this book has left to show you. Because whether asking matters depends entirely on a question almost too big to see: what kind of thing is tomorrow? Here is the disclosure this book has been saving since chapter 3 planted one word and promised to return for it. The word was care. You turned your life over to the care, not the control, of God, and this book said the care of God is roomy and left the room unexplained. Now the explanation, and it changes what every morning is. Much religion, and nearly all anxiety, pictures the future as a script. Written, finished, stored somewhere in the divine filing system, with time as merely the machinery that performs it. On that picture your day is a recording, your choices are playback, and prayer is reading requests to an author whose book went to press before the foundations. And this book, standing in a long and honorable stream of the tradition, wants to tell you with real joy, that is not the picture. The day is unwritten. Tomorrow is not a script awaiting performance. It is a genuine openness, real possibilities, really plural, really hinging in part on what you and grace do together inside it. Because the God of this book, the one who refuses to make machines of us, extends that refusal all the way into the structure of time itself. He does not merely permit your freedom as a formality. He makes room for it, hosts it, sustains it, furnishes it with real stakes, because what he wants from creation was never a performance of a finished score. What he wants is communion, and communion cannot be pre-recorded. And before the old fear objects, then is God not in control? Am I falling into managed arms or open air? Hear the distinction that settles it. An open future is not an unattended one. Nothing that can happen is outside his sight. Every possibility is eternally known, every contingency already met in the divine preparedness. No surprise finds him unprovisioned, and the end is not in doubt. The restoration, the lifting, the bosom, this book's whole final chapter is not one of the open questions. What is open is the path, the day's actual weave, the particular music. He is not the author of a finished script. He is something greater. The Lord of every possible script, who has chosen, out of sheer confidence and sheer love, to write this one with you. The author of this book comes from Louisiana, so forgive him the figure that was always coming, and receive it, because nothing says this better. The day is jazz. Not a symphony, every note engraved before the players arrive. Jazz. The theme given, ancient and sure. The changes held by a band that cannot lose the time. And inside that held structure, room, measures that exist for your solo, space deliberately kept open, where what you play is genuinely yours, genuinely new, genuinely awaited. A lesser bandleader writes out every note because he cannot trust the room. The master does the braver, warmer thing. He sets the theme, holds the changes unshakably, and nods you in. And when you fumble the solo, you will. This book has read your inventory, the band does not stop, and the time does not fall apart, and the theme is not lost. The changes catch your wrong notes and resolve them into passages you could never have written on purpose, which is what the elders in the rooms mean when they say God writes straight with crooked lines. Now reread the step with the music on. Praying for knowledge of His will is not requesting your pages from the finished score. There are no pages. There is a bandleader, and His will is not a script but a direction. The theme, the key, love's way through this particular day, which is why the tradition's word for finding it is not decoding but discernment. Ignatius's craft from chapter 4, the learned feel for which way the music is leaning, the eye on the bandleader's nod. And praying for the power to carry that out is asking for wind, breath, the spirit in the lungs, because the solo is yours but the breath never was. And petition. The sick child, the shaky newcomer. Petition matters now. Do you see? Matters metaphysically. In an unwritten day, asking is not reciting requests to a closed book. It is a real contribution to a real openness, heard by a real listener who, chapter 3, forever, genuinely receives it, is genuinely moved, and has left genuine room in the music for what your asking sets in motion. The big book's own creed says it in 9 words, and you can now hear every load-bearing joint in the sentence. God could and would if He were sought. Could. The power is not in question. Would. The willingness is not in question. If He were sought. And there it is. The open clause, the room in the music, the space where your seeking is not decoration but ingredient, the honest hinge that a prerecorded universe could never contain. The founders put a conditional at the center of their creed. They were better metaphysicians than they knew. So, the practices. And this book teaches them the way its teachers taught them, warmly, briefly, with permission to be terrible at them, since being terrible at them is the universal testimony of everyone who ever became good at them. From Father Thomas Keating, The Sitting Prayer, 20 minutes, or 10, or the 5 you actually have. A chair. A word. Any small word your heart can hold. Jesus, Abba, peace, home, yes. The word is not a mantra to be drummed. It is a consent. Your signature, renewed each time you notice you've wandered, on the form this book showed you in chapter 6. I am here, you may work. And you will wander, magnificently, within seconds, to the argument, the grocery list, the resentment doing encores. And here is Keating's whole teaching in one story, told to a discouraged sister who wailed that in 20 minutes she'd had 10,000 thoughts. How lovely, the old monk said, 10,000 opportunities to return to God. Read that twice and understand what it does to the economy of failure. In this prayer, the distraction is not the malfunction. The return is the prayer, which makes centering prayer nothing less than the whole program in miniature, the daily reprieve at the scale of the breath. Wander, notice, return, fall, be caught, resume, 10,000 relapses, 10,000 homecomings, and the physician working in the silence underneath all of it, unloading, Keating's word, the debris no willpower ever reached. Finishing in the quiet what chapter 7 began. From Jim Finley, The Breath Prayer, simple enough for a hospital bed, deep enough for a lifetime. Inhale, and let the inhale be God saying I love you. Because it is. The breath is the gift arriving. You did not manufacture this air or this moment. Exhale, and let the exhale be your I love you back. The answer rising. The whole bilateral grammar of chapter 7 riding on one respiration. And when even that is too many words, Finley's other gift, the song shortened breath by breath until it fits inside a heartbeat. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know. Be still. Be. And from Brian McLaren, for the walking hours, the two harmony words this book flagged long ago and now hands over. Behold, the one-word prayer of paying attention, prayable at a stoplight, over a sleeping child, at the sink. And, past all words, silence, the prayer of just being in the room with him, which long married couples will recognize as the highest form of the conversation. And one more practice, the oldest of them all, and the one this book has been saving for its own reasons. Thomas Merton, teaching his novices the ancient path, insisted on a station most modern spirituality skips. Before the wordless heights, the contemplation of the world. Natural contemplation, the fathers called it, the slow learning to read creation itself, because, here is Merton's sentence, and it may be the most beautiful working sentence in his corpus, the inner meanings of things are the word himself, present in them. The logos in the sparrow. The word in the water. Creation not as scenery behind the spiritual life but as the first love letter, the creature ward donation this book named long ago, God's self-giving arriving continuously as the sheer generous thoroughness of things, addressed, legible, waiting for a reader. And who can read it? Here is the tenderness aimed straight at you, the sober can. Ask anyone in the rooms about the first sober spring. The absurd greenness of it. The way food tasted returned from exile. The way rain on a windshield became, without warning, almost unbearable. The morning some ordinary tree stood there shining and you sat in the car a minute longer and could not have said why. That was not your nervous system recalibrating. Or rather it was, and the recalibration was the unmasking. The counterfeit altar had been draining the world gray for years, the parasite taxing every perception, and sobriety gave you back the original signal. The world, it turns out, was ablaze the whole time. Moses's bush was not the anomaly, Moses's noticing was. So the 11th step's meditation is not only the chair and the closed eyes. It is the recovered literacy of a reader restored to the library, the daily practice of walking through a spoken world with your eyes opened, which is, you will notice, this book's oldest image wearing work clothes. The road, the companion, the burning that precedes the recognizing. Conscious contact is Emmaus, practiced daily, on purpose. And on the mornings when nothing works, when the chair is a chore, the word is sand, the world is gray again and the contact feels like myth. This book leaves you where it left you once before, because there is nowhere better. The Spirit Himself intercedes, with sighs too deep for words. You are not the only one praying when you pray, you never were. The sun is the road under your feet and the Spirit is the breath in your saying, and on the empty mornings the two arms do not withdraw to watch you perform. They carry the prayer themselves, the way parents finish a sleepy child's sentence, fondly, having heard it 1,000 times. Show up. That is the whole assignment on the gray days. The contact does not depend on your feeling it. Feelings were never the signal, only the weather around the signal. He is on the road on the gray days too. Especially, the witnesses keep insisting, on the gray days. Stay with this step long enough. Months, seasons, and something begins to happen that you should be warned about, because it will not stay put. The contact overflows. The quiet starts leaking into the loud hours. The behold follows you out of the driveway. You catch yourself, mid-Tuesday, briefly, ridiculously glad. And then the strangest symptom of all. You start looking at other people, including difficult ones, including the newcomer shaking in the back row, the way you looked at the tree. The mystics all report it and none of them can fully explain it. The deepening inward always turns outward, as if the contact were not a private line after all but a current, and you not its terminus but its wire. The program noticed it too, and wrote it down as the beginning of the last step. having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. The awakening is not the end of the story. It is the commissioning. What wakes up? It turns out, wakes up for somebody, and who that somebody is, and what carrying the message really means, and why the meeting was the miracle's engine all along, is the last chapter of the steps, and nearly the last of this book.